So I'm showing them how to blend skin color, and I show them how to blend a light skin tone, and then I move on. And a student puts their hand up at the back of the room. This is a friend of a student who has a darker skin tone than me. And she says, well, how do you make a darker skin tone? And I stopped, and I swear my face must have went red because I felt absolutely ridiculous for just assuming that, well, everyone's just like me.
It's important that we are overt in talking about the 7 equity lenses so that all kids feel included, and their families feel included, and their families feel that their kids are included.
We had a problem area that we decided to focus on last year, and that was to focus on our essential level learners, our locally developed learners, our LEAP program, to work on decorum with them and to work on inclusive language with them so that they moved to a level of being more supportive of one another.
So it started with a lot of just casual conversations, right? Getting a pulse on our staff, putting out some phrases, some statements, some questions, and to see what those responses are. Then it moved into doing some walkthroughs, classroom observations, conversations around lesson planning, and it became apparent that there were staff who were beginning this work.
When I'm creating slideshows, for example, or assemblies, and I put up the images of our school, I've always just picked the pictures that I thought were cute, you know, the day in the life of, you know, not intentionally picking the face of my population. I'm admitting it. You know, I would put the right pictures out there that I thought would send a great message of what Frontenac looks like. And if I'm sending a message to my students, my staff, my parents, because we have community members come to these assemblies, if I'm not intentionally representing the changing face of our population, then I'm passively sending that message that you're not welcome.
I used to look maybe at the visible things that children came into the classroom, and I could visibly see, okay, well, you may be of a race that is different from mine or whatever it might be, but the training and the teaching made me realize that there's so much more to think about and look for and kind of dive into when you're dealing with children and people in general. And so I want to look at socioeconomic status. I want to look at, you know, what's the makeup of your family at home. In various points throughout the training, I found myself going, oh, wow, yeah, that was a thought that you just had. And we're maybe going to want to address that thought.
It's natural for people to see the world through their own lens, right? And there's going to be limitations to that. But it made me realize that, well, if I'm doing this, then other students are doing this too. And it's not really a perspective that I would want to model.
We all live our own experiences, and I was starting to realize when I was watching things and seeing things that in my own language. So with students, I would say, oh, you need to take this note home to mom and dad, because that's the way I grew up, and that's the way my children grew up. And it's what happens at our house, that when the note comes home, it goes to mom. And I needed to stop and almost retrain myself.
The last piece of the James Banks Continuum template that we created was, what's your next step? So there's an actual plan that each teacher has in order to move forward. So we were able to analyze, okay, this is what I think cultural responsive teaching is, this is what I'm currently doing, here's my next steps.
So I'm looking at the material that I'm buying, all material, more critically. Choosing books that maybe before I might not have been as comfortable reading with a large group, and extending myself that way and really thinking, am I being reflective of our community when I'm choosing materials and when I'm choosing materials to use with students?
I had a conversation with one of my intermediate teachers who was looking at how she could introduce some of the ideas about different families and gender identity. And so I said, you know what, there's an IPL we have who could come in and support you with that. And she was very excited. He came in and he helped lead some lessons for her. And so what I found was that when I identified some of our teachers who were doing the work and they were having success in it and they were tapping into some resources, then it spread. It's not just me as one individual, one person of color as the expert, but having others around that are championing as well, willing to be able to say, hey, listen, that isn't cool, or you know what, we really need to look at this, or have we thought about, and so you're not in it alone.
So we had these sheets printed up with a name and a picture for every student in the school, and we at a staff meeting had all of our staff, our EAs included, go through and connect their name next to a student that they had a connection with that went beyond just being in their class. We found that there were a surprising number of students who maybe didn't have any connections that staff members identified. And so the next step in what we're wanting to do with this project is to identify these students and see where some of those connections are, to look at their timetables, to see which teachers they've connected with, to see if they're involved with any clubs or teams.
In presenting myself to the class, I presented an identity container on the first day to introduce myself to my students, and they became very aware of what is important to me outside of school and what kind of a life that I lived. I let them know that I grew up in poverty myself, and so having that discussion, I think for students perhaps of lower cognitive ability who look at me as the teacher standing in front of the classroom, fairly well dressed, they would never know that, you know, when we were growing up, both of my parents were high school dropouts and we lived in housing complexes, and things like putting food on the table was a challenge for me. That opened up the world of discussion in the classroom, and they were feeling, I think, a lot more free to ask me questions about who I am. But they also, I think for some of them, felt a personal connection to me.
I'm a great believer that for students to achieve, they have to be comfortable, they have to feel safe, and they have to be included in a classroom. And if they feel that, they achieve well.
We had to choose a container that was special to us in some way, and it meant something to us. We had to pick items that just meant something special and had memories within it. I chose a picture of me and my sister because I didn't get to see her all summer because she was applying for colleges and getting her stuff ready for college. I felt it was fine sharing it because I knew that that they were all my friends and that they would understand and that they might have that connection with me too, with another family member. My grandma gave me a present before she died, and this is the box that she gave it to me in, so I just kind of redecorated it. I have my dad through the hockey medal, and it's gold and it says champions on it. This is where my teams in hockey won the championship. I chose this because I proved them wrong, that my team did go to the championship, and because it's about hockey, and hockey means so much to me.
A decision I made many years ago to go teach school in Malawi in Eastern Africa. I was the visible minority. I make no bones about it. I've grown up privileged. I'm a white male, and I come from the UK originally, and I've had lots of opportunities. When I was in Malawi, I was accepted and included into their society, into their cultures, into their villages, as if I'd lived there my whole life. And we talk about inclusion here. There was an example where I was included instantly. And it was many years ago. I made the decision to go there to make a difference, but the real difference was the difference they made on me.
Every time I have any kind of training in equity, inclusive education, culturally responsive teaching, I've done a lot of it throughout the course of my career, but every time it's such a great reminder that everybody comes with their own story, everybody comes with their own identity, and that is, it's a crucial part of who they are.